Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Okay, so Donald Trump did Joe Rogan's show. The Joe Rogan Experience, the Joe Rogan Podcast, whatever you want to call it. And of course, going into this, there was a lot of expectations, a lot of predictions. I think for the most part, people knew that this was a good strategic move, but there was some element of copium on the left suggesting that this would be a disaster for Donald Trump. Trump sitting on Rogan's show, he's gonna end up sounding like a lunatic. It's gonna be horrible for his campaign. Appearing on the Joe Rogan Podcast will be the end for Donald Trump. That was one of those predictions. You may not believe me, but trust me, it was happening. And if you exist on X or formerly Twitter at all, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But this prediction, of course, was nothing but pure, unadulterated copium. And now, of course, as the Joe Rogan Podcast has officially dropped, has been made public, we know that for a fact. That's exactly what it was. Pretty much just as expected, as predicted on this side, the podcast was amazing. And I think these appearances in this election cycle really might have made the difference. As I was going to bed last night, as I rested my head on the pillow, before the Joe Rogan Podcast was even released, I was thinking to myself, if Donald Trump ends up winning this election, it'll be thanks to their embrace of independent media, and frankly, their ditching of the corporate legacy media at large. This embrace of actually sitting down and speaking, and most importantly, being a normal human being, able to have a conversation and not just regurgitating empty platitudes and bogus talking points, well, it's a breath of fresh air for the voters. It's something new. It's something appreciated. And that topic or that point was brought up in the podcast. I want to show you guys that clip and just continue to have a conversation about this. If anything, this is why Donald Trump is leading in the polls right now. Let's have a conversation about that. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. All right, folks, so as promised, here's the little Joe Rogan bits that I wanted to play for you guys. Take a look.
So I always got more publicity than other people, and it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
You said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. One of the beautiful things about you is that you freeball. Like, you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like it's great timing. Yeah. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that.
Can you imagine Kamala doing this show?
I could imagine her doing this show.
She'd be laying on the floor.
She was supposed to do it, and she might still do it, and I hope she does.
She's not going to do it.
I will talk to her like a human being. I would try to have a conversation with her.
If she did this kind of an interview with you, I hope she does, because it would be a mess. She'd be laying on the floor comatose. You'd be saying, call in the medics.
I think we'd have a fine conversation. I think I'd be able to talk to her. I wouldn't try to interview her. I'd just try to have a conversation with her and hopefully get to know her as a human being. That was my goal, having her on.
Joe Rogan hits the nail on the head, which is exactly what I expected. It's exactly what I knew would happen. Joe Rogan's no Trump sycophant. I don't think his intention is to sit down with Donald Trump and to fluff him up and essentially try to get him elected. I think he just wanted to have a genuine conversation, and that's the beauty about Joe Rogan's show. That's why he's so popular. He just gets things. Do I agree with him 100% politically? Definitely not. Although we're probably closer than we are far apart, but it's not about partisan politics. It's about honesty. See, in modern day politics, the mainstream media has caused so much chaos. Republicans and Democrats aren't that different. Although, I have to admit, as the left goes further and further towards leftist insanity, at least certain minorities of the party, it gets harder and harder to find common ground. But for the most part, most of us, we want the same thing, whether we're left, right, or center. And we should be able to have conversations and form relationships. But in this day and age, it's become increasingly more difficult because the media, rather than pushing the message, love thy neighbor, they push a message of, if your neighbor has a Donald Trump sign out on their front lawn, they're supporting fascism. When really that's not the case at all. Left, right, and center. We should all be able to sit down and have a cordial conversation about topics, ideas, and that's where you see the good start to come to the surface. And Joe Rogan, well, Joe Rogan's an expert at that. He's an expert at not judging people. He even mentioned it when Donald Trump was trying to disparage Kamala Harris a little bit, trying to get a little bit of a campaign zinger in. Joe said, I could have a conversation with anyone as long as they're willing. And that's the beauty. And clearly one side has embraced that and another hasn't. Joe Rogan even said that he's been trying to have Kamala Harris on the show, and at one point it looked like she was going to do it, but instead they're refusing. Now, maybe as the polls continue to show what they're showing, the Kamala campaign is going to realize, well, we actually don't have a choice here and we definitely have to do Rogan. But at this point, even if Kamala Harris does the show, it won't make a difference to that core difference between these two campaigns. It's obvious that Donald Trump is just a regular guy. He's just a regular private citizen who happened to be incredibly successful, and he just had enough, and so he entered politics. And he entered politics not to be a political product, neatly packaged with all the packaged talking points, pre-rehearsed before he sits down with anyone. No, he entered politics, again, as a frustrated person who wanted to do better by his country. And that right there is the fundamental difference, and you can see it so clearly in this campaign. Kamala Harris sits down for these interviews, and when asked questions, she goes on these ridiculous tangents, then immediately, defaults to the ambitions and dreams and aspirations of the middle class. I am from a middle class family. The same rehearsed nonsense over and over again. What CNN described as word salad city. A couple things are really becoming plainly obvious here. It's obvious that Kamala Harris is fake, inauthentic, scripted and controlled. Donald Trump isn't. And it's also obvious that they use that against him, or at least they've attempted to. Donald Trump's not a scripted politician, meaning he's going to say all kinds of things, and eventually he might step on a few Lego pieces, let's call it. And then, of course, that's when the mainstream media jumps into action, misconstruing what he says, deceptively editing, and turning it into this big anti-Trump scandal. And with that, they've created the boogeyman of Trump. And in previous times, they probably would have been able to get away with it. But the world is different now, and I think finally the Trump campaign and really modern politics at large is starting to realize that. You don't need to rely on 60 Minutes, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS to reach voters anymore. There's other alternative pathways. And this is what I've been saying forever. This is the greatest strength of the Trump campaign right now. They realize there's a whole lot more people listening to independent sources than your typical mainstream sources. And I think they've also realized that a lot of these people are low propensity voters or undecided voters. And what better way to connect with voters than to sit down with someone like Joe Rogan, who's so deeply admired and so deeply loved by his core audience base, and also his core audience base who understands the way the media works, because of course Joe Rogan's been public enemy number one before. He's been demonized by the mainstream media, and so they understand these narratives. And now you have Donald Trump sitting down for a 3-hour conversation with Rogan.
How long have we been talking?
A long time.
Let's go.
Probably like 3 hours.
I got to make a speech,
Right.
but we'll do it again. I want to do it again with you.
Okay.
You are something.
Thank you very
I
much.
said, how long will this last? Anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4
How long
hours.
we do, Jamie? 3 hours.
Good. Well, we'll do it again. I thought it was great. I think it
was great. It was a lot of fun.
You are a fascinating guy, and
Thank
you've
you.
done a great job.
Thank you
I'm
very
a big
much.
fan, and thank you very much. It's been an honor. And
It's been an honor to
I'm
have
going
you
to
on as
make
well.
a great speech, and I'm going to say, and if I'm a little off tonight, I'm going to blame you. I'm going to
Blame
say I
me.
spoke
Go
to
ahead,
this guy
blame
for
me.
3 hours. Anyway, it's a great honor to be
Thank you, sir.
with you.
It's just incredible strategy. And you know what? I call it strategy, but is it really? It's more so authenticity. The Democrat Party is still a prehistoric political entity. They're stuck in the past. They're playing this old game, but people are kind of done with it. And meanwhile, the Republican Party is adapting and changing, crafting this strategy that's built for the modern information day. And that's exactly why this works. Some people might suggest, well, it's not working that well. Donald Trump is essentially statistically tied in the polls. Yeah, but Donald Trump doesn't have the entire media establishment kissing his feet. He doesn't have Beyonce rallying with him, pulling in 30,000 people into a venue. It's man versus the entire machine, and he's getting the job done. What does that tell you? It's an underdog story, and it's the rise of authentic politics, and hopefully the end of inauthentic, scripted mainstream politics. Anyways, that's pretty much what I got. Maybe I was a little bit all over the place, but hopefully you guys get the gist of it. Hopefully you guys get the point that I was trying to sell here. This Joe Rogan podcast was an incredible success. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.